I do not want him around with 200, 300 meters to go. His finish is furious, and this is going to be a dogfight.
And Will, it is a different story here than what we saw in the women's race, where no one had the standard coming in. 4 men have the standard here: Blanks, Fisher, Kincaid, and Young. So they don't necessarily need this to be the fastest race, but if you want to beat Woody Kincaid in your one of these distance powerhouses like a Grant Fisher, maybe your best recipe is to try to run this at a fast enough pace where you can run some of that finish off of Woody Kincaid, because we've seen some ridiculous last laps from Kincaid on this track at U.S. Championships before.
Absolutely, and while all of these, many of these athletes, namely Nico Young and Graham Blanks, were over in Europe running unbelievably fast 5,000 meter races on the Diamond League circuit, Woody's just been putting himself in the best shape he possibly could for this single day. And I think that says a lot about where his head's at, how he views the competitive season, and what he's looking forward to between here and Tokyo.
The depth here is so good again in this race. Some of the other names to keep an eye on: Ahmed Muhammad has run 27:03 this year. Casey Klinger's run 27:11 this year. You got Drew Hunter with his best 10,000 of his career earlier this year, 27:24. So there's a menu of guys to pick from here, depending on how this race shakes out.
Yeah, it does appear potentially as though Drew Hunter was a DNS, but again, that does not deny the firepower at all that is sitting right up at the front of this race. Grant Fisher sitting in third, just going out for a stroll here over the first 400 meters. Bob Liking from the University of Wisconsin taking it out in 71.2, so very much a casual pace, we'll call it, for these athletes right now.
So Liking leading, Klinger tucked in just behind him, 26-year-old who wrapped up his career at BYU last year and then finished 5th at the Olympic trials in this race last year. Fisher comfortably behind him, coming off the double bronze in Paris last year. What do you feel like between Fisher's success in the 5 and the 10, what Cole Hawker was able to do in the 1500, what has this generation of American men done for distance running here in the United States?
I think they've reinvigorated. They've put a shot right into the arm and electrified A, fans, and B, other athletes. It no longer is just a couple of guys vying for these spots and hoping to make finals and being also rans at championships. We are looking to win medals across every event in track and field. And where we used to be a sprints nation, now we're a track and field nation.
Speaking of the field, the final event on the infield tonight is the women's F34, F57 pair of shot. But these are the last 2 throws for Christina Gardner. We're going to look at her second round throw, which is her current best, 26 feet 4 1/4 inches. She's thrown 4 throws now. Her best 25 feet 6 1/4 inches in round 4, just behind her second round throw, and just uncorked a 5th round throw of 7 meters 94. Gardner, dual sport athlete. She's the captain of the U.S. women's sled hockey team, or has been in the past few years. That is not a winter Paralympic sport, so she's continued to compete in the summer events. But one of the best female sled hockey players in the entire country. And here's the final throw for her, the final throw of this competition. She already had the victory. And we'll get that final measurement. Looks like that maybe is her best of the day, right out there around the 8-meter mark. It is her best. She closed the competition with 26 feet 11 1/4 inches, 8 meters 21, and wins the F57 national championship.
Gardner saving the best for last there, Bill. You love to see that, and honestly, it's a way in which they structure those the seated throws events. I think it'd be really interesting if there was a way in which we did that with the able-bodied athletes, right? Like once you find your groove, we were talking about this with Dan with the long jumpers. If they have to sit out there for 20 minutes between efforts versus being like, all right, I'm gonna take all 6 jumps now. I know it's there's a lot of different components that lead to each of those sports and their success, but just a curious, maybe sometime we'll give it a go.
Yeah. All right, through the opening K in 2:56. Working on their 4th lap of 25 here, and it's still Bob Liking out of the University of Wisconsin leading. Casey Klinger in 2nd, Grant Fisher in 3rd, and Nico Young glued to the back of Fisher in 4th. Woody Kincaid making sure he's right up near the front in 5th, and Graham Blanks behind him in 6th. So the key players have all positioned themselves up near the front, but not at the very front here.
Yeah, very similar to what we saw in the women's race, where it started off pretty slowly. You know, the pace was, again, reasonable but not insane in terms of are we knocking on the door of anyone setting any sort of record tonight. Bob Liking, again, taking an opportunity to lead out a national championship. What a great opportunity for a young athlete like Bob. Bob just graduated from the University of Wisconsin this year. But the athletes, again, behind him they're just waiting to suss each other out. I think everyone in this race is sort of looking towards Grant Fisher to see when and where Grant's going to make his move. He's the type of athlete that he could, if he wanted, take this from the gun, and that probably wouldn't have surprised a lot of people. He could make some crazy mid-race moves. That wouldn't surprise a lot of people. And if he just wanted to wait around until the very end, save something in his legs over 5K, then, you know, again, everyone's there to watch and I think to react.
Yep. 68 seconds on the last lap was the fastest so far. As Liking will continue to lead. Yeah, we mentioned those top contenders, the 4 guys with the standard. If you had to pick one wild card, someone maybe not with the standard here that you feel like could make a big splash, who would it be?
I gotta say, Ahmed Mohamed. You know, he's had some very, very good races this year. He's won some road championships. Trains up in Flagstaff. Young. Has a varied skill set, but right now I think with the way this race is panning out, I think it's going to be tough to crack into the top 4 of guys who are, you know, their speed and strength is sort of at a level above a lot of the other athletes that we're seeing.
253.7 on the second 1,000 meters. Liking continuing to lead. Klinger there in second. Yeah, Kincaid, Young, and Fisher still in 5th, 4th, and 3rd, respectively. Fisher hasn't run a 10K yet this year. Number of 3Ks and 5Ks. He'll run the 5,000 meters in a couple of days as well. That's Sunday afternoon. Forecast for this whole week looks really good, all things considered. Nothing out of the mid-80s, none of those 90 or 100-degree days we've had at some past national championships. So about as good as you could hope for these long-distance runners here.
Yeah, one of the things I'm clicking through some stats right now looking at is, you know, season's best say one thing, but when in the season they ran those season's best says another. We always see a flurry of unbelievable times run at BU in the early winter, and then, you know, how do those athletes hold that fitness? How do they manage the months and months of grueling training that it takes to, again, show up at a USA's fresh and ready to rock and roll? Ahmed Mohamed, who I just mentioned, ran 13:07 at the Track Fest down in LA at the end of May. So if anything, he's in his best form right now. We're starting to see, again, as this race begins to lag, the pace just dropped there from 70.3 to 71.6, that there's some athletes who are taking this as an opportunity. You know, we saw a couple of those types of athletes in the women's race where, hey, if you guys are going to jog around, I'm going to start moving around and putting myself up towards the front of this race and see what happens.
And one man has made sure he's been at the front of the race the entire way, and that's Bob Liking in the white and red of Wisconsin. You got Klinger tucked in there behind. Again, coming in off seed time, he had the 6th fastest seed time coming in, 27:11 run this year. Was 5th in this race last year. Won the 25K road championship this year, but then also finished 2nd in the 5K road championship. So that's some serious range. Win a 25K, 2nd in the 5K. A little bit of speed, a little bit of endurance there for Klinger. 74.6, the slowest lap of the race the last time around, as no one's wanted to grab the race yet.
Yeah, and we can tell it's happening by the bunching going on through this pack. It was, I don't want to say comfortably people running in single file. It's sort of like the easiest way to do it. You run the shortest distance around the track. But now we got athletes out in lane 3. It looks like you might even have some athletes that are considering taking some water from the kind folks out on the back stretch. But right now, again, as we were talking about some athletes taking an opportunity to go to the front, this is Aiden O'Gorman, moving to the front in front of Casey Klinger. But then, you know, slotted right in there is Grant Fisher, where Bob Liking is now between himself and Grant Fisher and Nico Young, where I got to think that Nico Young, that's not where he wants to be. You know, he wants to be right on the backside of Grant Fisher. Look, if Faith Kipyegon is choosing Grant Fisher to be the guy that might propel you to a sub-4-minute mile, there's got to be something special about following him.
Yeah, she said she loved his cadence, the way he ran, the styles suited her, so he was right there in front of her in that pursuit of 4 minutes. And one of my favorite things about those events, when you've seen the athletes challenge the marks, be it the 2-hour marathon or the 4-minute mile for Faith, is how some of the top runners in the world give of themselves to show up and be support there the way that, say, a Grant Fisher was. We're on a 30:15 projected pace at this point, with O'Gorman leading ahead of Klinger and Fisher.
Talking about, just superhuman efforts, right? When you have an opportunity to be a part of history, I think every athlete wants to take part in that. So if anything, it was an honor to receive that call from the folks over at the Swoosh to say, like, hey, would you come in? Would you consider coming in and helping Faith try and break 4 minutes for the first time? Well, you bet your bottom dollar I will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You get the feeling at this point, to me, it kind of feels like we're waiting for when, not if, Grant Fisher is going to be the one who's going to have to put a little spice into this race and break it up. He's been very comfortable there in third. When does maybe a Nico Young think, hey, it's time to go, it's time to shake this one up a little bit?
Yeah, the laps are clicking by, but I would be honest if I would be misleading anyone who's watching right now by saying they're going by fairly quickly. They are not going by super quick. Pace has gone back down into the low 70s. We saw a couple 60, 69, 68 early on in the race, but as the overall predicted time started to fade away, I would imagine we're now going to start going back down ever so slightly. But something that I think it would be an interesting, if you're patched into the USATF.tv feed, listening.
I'm sure he's doing that.
Yeah,
right now.
I thought he had an AirPod in, but I'd be curious to see if Nico tries to take a swing at Grant. Nico has had an unbelievable summer. He's run times that very few, if any, Americans ever have before. I mean, as I said earlier, he has the outdoor American record over 5,000 meters. If he tries to take a swing at Grant Fisher, or if he tries to play it safe and just make sure he punches his ticket to Tokyo.
Well, the way this is played out, we're about to hit the 4K mark, so it's almost turning into a 5K, the way that the first 4,000 meters or so have been run. So who's got the best 5K strength here at the end could be the big differentiator again. He has the standard, Fisher has the standard, Kincaid has the standard, and Blanks has the standard. So if some combination of those three are in the top three, those are your Tokyo-bound World Championship athletes.
For the fans at home, every lane that you go out on the track, you run about 8 meters further per lap. So another thing that I don't really love to see is Woody running on the outside of lane 1, whereas you have Grant Fisher and Nico Young who are just running right on that rail. Woody, I mean, you can see the sweat starting to go with a lot of these athletes. Woody, again, you said you see lodged right there in between Nico and Graham, but running those extra yards, and while they're not running exceptionally quickly, it's still running further. Running further is running further. There's no way to shake that. And they have gone from a run to a walk. We have just thrown the brakes on. I think you have a lot of the guys in this race that are probably going to get a little frustrated that one of the big four hasn't taken this on.
I feel like amateur runners can relate to what Woody Kincaid's going through now, because how often you check your watch after running a 5K and it's 3.16 or 3.18 because you realize you were zigzagging all around the course here. Kincaid is still there in 5th place on the outside. We talked about it a bit. Is it going to be Nico? Is it going to be Fisher? But we're still waiting for somebody to decide it is time to break it open. It's time to take the lead. They went 75.3, slowest lap of the race.
Slowest lap of the race. I think that we are probably going to see an athlete that we haven't mentioned as being one of those top contenders for qualifying for the World Championships that maybe does a flyer off the front. I'd love to see it. Keep this thing interesting. Go nuts. Go swing. Go for broke. But again, we sort of talked about this during the women's 1,500 meter prelims today, that the longer that everyone stays in this, the higher that you have athletes like Brian Barazza, for example, who's running personal bests from 10,000 down to 5K, down to 3K this year, who wants to be like, I want to finish as high as I possibly can in a national championships. And so maybe I'm not going to take the risk of taking a flyer off the front. But for athletes like Ahmed Muhammad, who we talked about a little earlier, I'd love to just see him go for it. There's Brian Barazza there, headband and the long hair, trains in Boulder, Colorado. I get the pleasure of seeing Brian out at the track train every once in a while. Used to be a member of the Tin Man Elite group there with Drew Hunter and Sam Parsons and those guys. But the way that this is shaking out right now is it's shaking out to be potentially a 1-mile race. And Ahmed Muhammad and Brian Barraza are sitting there right on the heels of the front four. That's those big four that we keep talking about with the World Championship standards, covering the moves. And I think maybe giving them a little bit too much respect here. I mean, if you had two guys off the front working together, maybe they could get away if the big four are asleep at the wheel.
Meanwhile, I know Gorman's getting the camera time here. He's led for more than 1,000 meters at this point. We're coming up on the midway point. The 5,000 meter split is 14:54.58, a 3:02.000 last time around.
Hey, look, Aiden's friends and family are pumped to see him at the front of this race right now. He steps to the side, lets Casey Klinger do some of the leading. But hey, here we go. Here go some guys that are getting a little bit antsy and might want to take a swing. They have 4,800 meters remaining in this race. The glasses are off. Is that going to be the move of the proverbial gloves being tossed? Who knows yet? We'll wait and see right now. But we have 12 laps remaining in this race. Don't forget to pick those up after the race, young man.
Drew Bosley goes glasses off and glasses to the side here. Bosley just wrapped up his college career at NAU. A couple of conference championships this season. Always been a clutch runner, though. Bosley, as we'll watch him here, chuck those sunglasses out of the way. When Bosley was a freshman at Northern Arizona University at the NCAA Cross Country Championships, he was their 5th scorer. It was a really close race between NAU and BYU that year, and his 5th place scorer was the difference to get them a national championship. I don't know if you noticed his knees are also all gashed up, so I don't know if he missed it earlier, but both his knees looked like he was cut up earlier in the race, maybe took a spike or two. Because he's not only lost the sunglasses, he's losing some blood there from both knees.
Lord knows you're going to need it in a 10K. No, I imagine with the on-again, off-again pace nature that they've been feeling, the accordion when you're in the back of the pack is so much more aggressive than when you're in the front driving the pace. You definitely feel the changes in pace when you're in the back. Those appear to be some puncture wounds. We'll clean those things up after the end of the race, but not to worry about it if I'm Drew Bosley. But we have James Moara and Drew Bosley now taking over the front of this race. Again, they haven't really done much to change the pace, but just a couple other guys getting a little FaceTime for the camera, showing out for the family and friends.
Well, that's what you talked about a bit. Some other guys moving toward the front. Will Smith, the 23-year-old who ran at Gonzaga, has also moved up into a top 5 spot, 72.8 on the last lap. Klinger's still there in the top 5. Ritter's moving up on the outside, and that is forcing some of those contenders a bit further back. I mean, Grant Fisher's no longer in 3rd place. He's still along the rail, but he's getting a bit boxed in here as we're going 3-4 wide here. It's like a NASCAR race around Talladega at this point. Cars all the way up to the outside wall.
I'll be honest, though, when I start to look at the facial expressions of the athletes when we do that close-up, we're starting to see a lot of furrowed brows, and I wonder if it's the sweat that's getting into their eyes or if the heat and humidity is starting to weigh on these athletes. You know, again, we're not running that fast. This should be very, very easy. It's almost tempo run pace for most of these guys out there. This should be very, very comfortable, as we're seeing, as we said, athletes going 2-3 wide on the home stretch here. But I have to wonder, given the looks on their faces, if it's feeling much more challenging than it should. You know, you start to see these splits and you're like, I run them every day in practice. This is not supposed to be hard. Why does this feel hard? Well, the weight of the world is on the shoulder of a lot of these athletes qualifying for the national championships, maybe for the 1st or 2nd time, and trying to, you know, show up here and be their best.
76 seconds on the last lap, 3:04 on the last kilometers. We're 6,000 down at 18:01. And Bosley still leads. Temperature 77 degrees, the humidity 54%. So again, it has been hotter here, but I wouldn't say it's comfortable. The sun not only has started to set, but there is just kind of this high cloud cover, so it's kept direct sunlight out of the field. But again, it's easy for us to say sitting up here.
Yeah, nice and cool. Got a nice little cool breeze up in the concourse of beautiful Hayward Field. Drew Bosley continues to lead this. We had a 76.17 on the last lap. Again, rewriting the history books here for the slowest lap of the race. You know, Drew Bosley, another one of these athletes who I think he's just putting himself up there in the mix so that ultimately when the Grant Fishers, when the Nico Youngs, when the Woody Kincaids, when the Graham Blankses start to think about making that move, you know, he's up there and he's ready. But look, when we look back on Graham Blanks' face, Nico Young looks very relaxed. Graham Blanks next to him, his face is telling a little bit of a different story, and Woody Kincaid has been sort of prefacing it, or showing a preview of this since the early parts of the race. And so I really have to wonder whether these guys are just not loving competing out there on this evening in Hayward. But again, to us, it feels quite comfortable, but down on the track, it could be saying a completely different story.
I'm going to spin this positively, though. A glass half full guy. We may see one of the fastest final 4 laps of a 10,000 that you've seen here at a national championship. As you see the 4 we've talked about a lot, Fisher, Young, Kincaid, and Blanks, still all running together. So even though they're not right up at the front anymore, they're staying in a group, kind of watching each other. Young's made sure he's been behind Fisher. Kincaid's been right there. Blanks has been tucked behind Young the whole way. So they haven't gotten broken up at all here. And it still feels like a when, not if, they're going to have their say here in this race.
Absolutely. You know, it almost feels a little bit Tour de France, right? Where the Tadej Pogacar and Jonas Vingegaard, they're just sizing each other up. They're not really too concerned about really anybody else in this race. Even if someone tries to start pushing the pace from the front, they know that their abilities will carry them to the finish line towards the front of this race. But I think that was just the 2 miles to go, Mark, where, you know, again, we talk about some magic numbers in the 2 mile event of 8 minutes. You know, will one of these guys try and take a stab? We saw Grant Fisher in the Grand Slam meets go sub-4 solo by himself down in Miramar for the last mile of the race, running away from a very, very established field. Is that what we're going to see, or is someone else going to go even earlier?
Well, if they're going to take a shot at 8 minutes, I think that chance has come and gone here through the first 200 of that mile. I haven't seen a real kick up of the pace yet. And now Kincaid will go step or two ahead of Fisher, still running on the outsides. You mentioned adding meters every one of these 25 laps for Woody Kincaid.
There's something about fitness that having a kick like Woody's, it's not necessarily how fit you are, but whether if you're fit enough to be in the race to use it. And so I think Woody is not too upset about this slow pace right now. I think he's probably feeling pretty good about his chances if this comes down to a mile or even shorter race, being able to put himself close enough to the front to unleash his devastating kick. But again, right now, I think the pace, it looks to me like they've increased the tempo just ever so slightly, 71.7 on that lap. Things are still far from serious.
At 3:05 on the last 1,000-meter checkpoint and 71 on the last lap, with Bosley and O'Gorman in the top 2 spots. Turner Wiley of Brooks Club Northwest wearing the baseball cap in the yellow and blue, outside of James Moara, the Gonzaga Bulldog, in the top 4 spots. Will Smith in the orange of the Hanson Brooks Distance Project is there in 5th place, and Casey Klinger's been right up near the front all along. He's in 6th. Ritter in 7th. Bob Liking, who led the very early part of this race, there in 8th. And it's Grant Fisher and Woody Kincaid in 9th and 10th ahead of Nico Young, Graham Blanks, and don't forget about Ahmed Muhammad, who has stayed right in that group as well. We keep talking about a group of 4. Muhammad wants us to think of it as a group of 5, as he has had the 5th best time coming, and he's right there next to Nico Young. O'Gorman continues to pick it up ever so slightly. They're back into the 60s, 69 on that last lap, 69.2. So getting closer to the business end of this one with 6 laps to go.
You get the sense, you're feeling it in the stadium, that something is about to happen. I can't say enough about these races. What did we learn by watching Grand Slam this year is that it doesn't matter if a race is really slow. If it's slow, it's going to have a very exciting finish, and everyone here is on the edge of their seats. This crowd has so much appreciation for the 10,000 meters. They got to see an incredible one at the Prefontaine Classic just a little while ago, where unfortunately tonight we saw Conor Mantz on the start list. Not seeing him on the starting line would have been great. I would have loved to see a Conor Mantz in this race, just grinding it out from the front, trying to put these guys a little bit on their heels.
Would have had a much different tempo to this race.
Yeah, one would have to imagine. But I mean, guys by the likes of Turner Wiley, this is a marathoner out there. He's a 2:11 guy in the marathon. This is about that same pace, so he's got to be, feeling pretty comfortable. He's finding himself 5 laps to go, 2K remaining. Turner Wiley in 4th place. James Moara, Aidan O'Gorman, and Drew Bosley Bosley are your top 4. With 5 laps to go, did you think that we would be saying that, Bill?
No, very patient race from Fisher. Sitting back there still in the middle. They went 68.2, fastest lap so far last time around. Bosley has moved ahead of O'Gorman. Looks like he's picking the pace up even more. Will that prompt a response from the middle of the pack? It looks like Blanks is starting to slide wide. Fisher's come out to the outside as well. And Grant Fisher has decided inside of 5 laps to go, might be time to grab some control of this race.
At least not let it get too far away from me. I mean, these guys are covering this move with ease. Drew Bosley out there trying to, just let them know that he means business, that he's for real, that I maybe just graduated from college, but I have an entire pro career in front of me, and I am excited about it. Graham Blanks right on the heels, hot on the heels of Grant Fisher, and these guys are about to make this a 1-mile race. If anyone wants to watch a fast mile, this will be one for the ages.
Mile to go. Bosley, Fisher, Blanks, Nico Young, your top 4. Young had to work pretty hard the last couple 100 meters. He had been boxed in, so it took him a while to match the move, but comes all the way into your screen in a top 4 spot. Kincaid in the top 6. They went 65.3, so really dropped the pace there on that lap. Look at Woody Kincaid's got to bridge a bit of a gap here. He's trying to gain contact with the first 6. He's back into 7th. Bosley, who led for a while at the slower pace, sticking around here at the front with Fisher, Blanks, and Young just behind. Muhammad also there.
And we've just seen Grant Fisher touch the front of this race for the very first time. Graham Blanks hot on his heels. Both of them have moved around Drew Bosley, but Drew Bosley is not willing to give up his position. Nico Young trying to get around Drew Bosley, a guy who he must have put in a lot of miles with up in the high mountains of Flagstaff. One of the things, if you are a stats nerd, dial into results.usatf.org. They're giving 100-meter splits. We're watching, now we're under 15-second tempo. That's sub-4-minute tempo. Grant Fisher, Graham Blanks, Drew Bosley, and that is Nico Young, followed by Ahmed Mohammed. These 5 are starting to get away. 60.3 on that lap.
And Blanks was 58.83 on that lap into 2nd place behind Fisher, who went 60.18. This race has been broken apart. Now just 6 here, and Woody Kincaid is not. You mentioned earlier it looked like he was laboring a bit. He did not cover this move.
No, these 5 athletes are breaking away, but this race is anything but over. 1 kilometer remaining. 1 kilometer remaining between a finish line and a national championship and tickets punched to Tokyo. There are 3 athletes in the front right now, all 3 of whom have the World Championship qualifying standard. So dishing out those tickets to Tokyo is going to be amongst these 3 men.
Early in this race, we saw 304 1,000-meter splits. We just saw 234 in the last 1,000. Grant Fisher has taken charge. Graham Blanks right behind him. Nico Young into a top 3 spot. These 3 all have the World Championship standard, and they have left the next chunk behind. Bosley and Muhammad have fallen off. It is a 3-man race inside the final 800. 59.5 on the last lap.
159.8 on the last 800 meters. That's sub 4-minute tempo. And guess what? If we've learned anything about Nico Young, it's to not read too much into his facial expressions. Even if it looks like he is hurting badly, there is still more in the tank from Nico Young. Graham Blanks, Nico Young, Grant Fisher, these 3 men have run away from this field, decimated them over the last kilometer. And does Grant Fisher have enough to run away from the likes of Graham Blanks and Nico Young?
All 3 still there. 500 meters to go. Fisher, the double bronze medalist in Paris. Blanks, a Paris Olympian. Young, a Paris Olympian. Here comes the bell. It is anyone's national championship as this trio turns in lockstep.
Pride is on the line right now. Graham Blanks has never won a U.S. championship. 60.9 on that lap. Is Grant Fisher starting to falter at the front? Graham Blanks looks fantastic. Nico Young going to the arms, going wide, blasting past Graham Blanks. Will he make a move hard on Grant Fisher? Can Grant Fisher respond? Can Graham Blanks respond, or is Nico Young going to run away from this race? Grant Fisher, hot on his heels, goes to the arms, quickens the pace, quickens the cadence. That 3, they still have not broken up, even with these immense moves.
Here comes your Tokyo trio. All 3 are World Championship bound. Young into the top spot. Here's one more response from Grant Fisher. Nico Young in the lead. Fisher goes to the outside. Too wide for the final 50 meters. goes. Young grits his teeth. He holds off Grant Fisher, and Nico Young's the national champion. 56-38 over the final 400. .357 over the final mile for Nico Young to win the title at 22. Fisher second, Blanks third. All three will make the World Championship.
Now that is an exciting way to run a K. It's a different way to run a 10K, but gosh darn it if it's not exciting. We saw Nico Young do this in Philadelphia. We saw Nico Young do this in London. He has found something new in training that has given him a blistering kick over the final 100 meters, such that the likes of Grant Fisher could not respond to. But what a battle that they had over the final 50. Both athletes going absolutely to the well, giving everything that they have. Nico Young emerging victorious today over Grant Fisher. Congratulations to Nico Young.
This finish, fantastic. Looked like Young had made the move with about 250 meters or so to go. But Fisher had another response, nearly got back to him on the backstretch. This was what looked like the decisive move.
Nico Young made that hard pass on the outside, but you wondered if it was just too soon. Grant Fisher looks relaxed behind him, and Graham Blanks looks like he's trying to make a pass, a hard pass on the outside, and maybe this move right there, you saw a little bit of a rubbing of the shoulders, got Grant Fisher off of his rhythm. Grant Fisher tries to respond and slingshot off the final bend, going wide on Nico Young. Nico Young, mouth agape, driving the arms hard, pumping as hard as he can. Grant Fisher trying to respond, but just could not empty the tank harder than Nico Young, and Nico Young leaving 2 to 3 meters between himself and Grant Fisher when it was all said and done.
So Young, Fisher, and Blanks in that order. All three will go to the World Championship. Young has the national title here in the 10,000. I mean, he's been a prodigy since his high school days. 10,000 is not supposed to be a young man's race, and at 22, he's the national champion here.
I think a lot of the old adages of track and field are being thrown on their heads right now, but I gotta say, hats off to Nico Young. Those three athletes, Graham, Nico, and Grant, they just sat. You know, they were definitely running within themselves, ready to react to anything that the field had to throw at them, but Nico's move on the backstretch just was just full of confidence.